Okay, so tonight's presentation is Where Does Your Time Go? I want to just say first off that I don't have magic bullets when it comes to organizing your time. I can give you some simple strategies, and these are not all the strategies that you can apply. There are several other ways to approach time, okay? So I just want to say that up front. So what the agenda is tonight is I'd like to kind of just get an idea of what you think the definition of time management is, meaning what do you understand it to be, which is going to be important to you really understanding what time management is and gives me kind of a point of reference. We're going to do a quick exercise. The exercise really is meant for you to reflect. I'm not going to spend an awful lot of time on those. Then we're going to talk just briefly about some traps and myths of time management. And of course, I'm going to give you the definition of time and time management and what the understanding is. And of course, I'm sure through the exercises, is already going to highlight it. I'm sure this is not, rocket science, so I'm sure you already do understand what time and time management is. And then, of course, we'll talk a little bit about where your time goes, and then I'm also going to talk about some strategies that can hopefully increase your effectiveness and efficiency. So hold on one second. I see that Tracy cannot hear. Okay, so let's just start first about, the questions about time. So you don't have to raise your hand here. Just type about, what you, how you define time and what time management actually means to you. Okay, and again, there's no wrong or right answer here. I would like to just see what everybody is thinking, where everybody's coming from. Yes, being able to complete tasks, plan, etc. on time. Setting aside time to tackle tasks in order of priority. Yes. No, okay, I cannot hear anything. Open your YouTube just to check it and worked fine with that. Okay. To constructively utilize my time. Yep. Setting time aside to complete tasks and 30 minutes for lunch, 20 minutes for a workout. Proper planning and realistic allocation of time, the ability to manage and organize your time to accomplish a given task. Very good, yes. Allocating your time to best fulfill all of your tasks, yes, which is sometimes tricky. Time management is planning to use your time to complete tasks and prioritize those tasks, yes. And then making sure I have time to do all the things that need to be done. And again, yes, that can be very challenging, can't it? Okay, good. So why don't you go on to the next question is, what do you think are, for instance, the main time traps, and more importantly, your time traps, at least what you think? So your time trap is after work, okay? Being able to complete tasks in a timely manner, yes. Work, family, pets, yes. I have difficulty feeling time pass. Difficulty feeling time pass. It's not absorbed by anything in particular. I just don't feel it's passing, then it's gone. Got it. Interruptions, wife, family, and friends. Lisa, it could be just the way you look at time. Okay. Yes, family and cooking. Yes. Laziness, procrastination, just don't wanna. I hear you. Work, family, too tired, social life. After working full-time, having a family, yes. Traffic, unexpected opportunities or problems, yes. Yep, all of those. Okay, and of course, we'll talk a little bit about all of those things in the presentation. Okay, hold on one second. I'm just talking to M. Tracy. Okay, feeling overwhelmed. Yes, I can understand, Regina. And then work responsibilities outside of work hours and the need for downtime. Yes, because downtime is important. Okay. Downtime is very important to refresh, because if you don't do that, it's very difficult to do your work. All right, great. All right, so now we're going to go to a fun part. Okay, feeling responsible for everyone and not saying no. That's setting boundaries, and it's very difficult to do that. I understand. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do, and just give me a moment because I can set the polling up. I don't want to spend an awful lot of time on this, but I do want you to think a little bit. So the check and the X have changed now to letters A, B, C, D, and E. And so what I want you to do is answer the first poll using those letters, or don't. It's up to you. Do you include travel time in your daily schedule? Okay. If you're using a schedule, say for instance, are you including it? So if you can use those letters, do you see the letters? I know everybody's putting it in the chat area. Try not to put it in the chat area if you can. If you can select the letters that are down below the participants window, that will be great. It'll be hard for me to follow, that's all. Great, thank you. Okay, good. Okay. And so it looks like it's about even. In general, everybody does include some travel time, or at least you do, but not consistently. Okay, that's good. That's a good start. Okay, and what about number 2? How much leisure time do you think you have in a typical day? And when I say think, sometimes people have more leisure time than they think. But take your best guess. Okay, so it looks like anywhere from, half hour to 2 hours, and then the next is 2 to 4 hours. Okay, good. So at least you recognize that. That's good. Okay. All right, so we're going to go to the next one. We do have a couple more, and again, it's just to make you think, how much sleep did you get? Do you get on average? I know you're probably thinking, why is that important? But it is. Okay, so it looks like you guys are good sleepers. Okay, so up to 6 hours, which, well, it's not bad, okay? Good. And then let's go to poll 4. How much television do you watch in a typical day? Regardless if you're watching it or not, if it's on, it's still a distraction. Okay, so about a half hour to 2 hours, good. And then it looks like we've got a tie between the rest, which is great. Okay, we got 2 more because I really like polls. Okay, so 5. How much time is spent on Facebook or other types of social media sites? And I understand that there's a fine line here too, because obviously business is also part of this. So, take that into consideration too. If it's business, that's not really considered, I guess, leisure time, unless of course you're using it as leisure time. Okay, so it looks like anywhere from 0 to half hour. Well, you guys are good. You're not spending very much time in there at all, which explains a lot. Let me see here. We did some research on actually social websites, and it's just interesting, the information. That's what I mean. It's interesting, a lot of information that comes out about the social networks. Okay, how much time is spent on using your smartphone, texting in a typical day? And again, I know business kind of can fall into this category. Let me get rid of those. But look at more leisure or personal, I should say. Okay, so it looks like a 0 to about a half hour, and then we've got a tie for the rest, with the exception of D, okay, which is 2 to 4 hours. Okay, good. Very good. So it got you thinking, right? You're probably thinking, why is this important? Well, it does make you reflect to think about time, like, you know, where does your time go? And believe it or not, some of these things kind of suck up your time without really realizing it. And most likely, even though you gave me those answers, it's probably a little bit more than you think. Okay, so let's talk about those time traps, okay, because that poll was really to kind of make you think about some of those time traps, which, you know, they are. So, insufficient sleep. That's a time trap. You're thinking, how? Well, if you're not getting enough sleep, okay, it does affect your ability to be efficient and to be productive. We all know that. So, you know, if possible, you try to get more than 6 hours. I know the doctors or everybody's saying to get more than 6 hours, close to 8 hours, you know. I don't know. Some people work better on 6 hours, some people work better on 8 hours. But obviously find where that balance is and try to achieve that. Now, sometimes I know that's difficult. You know, life in general gets in the way. But it does help with your schoolwork. It does help with the ability for you to, you know, obviously absorb the information that you're taking in, as well as outputting that information for any of the assignments and so on and so forth. Technology. You know, it's a given. You know, technology is part of our life. It's not going to go away. And I understand technology, we do need some distractions, okay? And to some degree, this is downtime for some people, okay? Is television, the internet, you know, texting, just, you know, our way of socializing. So that's fine. Just be aware of it, that if it becomes excessive or it becomes, you know, basically a distraction or a procrastination tool, then you have to somehow kind of, you know, get yourself out of that habit. Procrastinating, you know, everybody procrastinates. I procrastinate. You know, when we don't want to do something, you know, there's lots of reasons why we procrastinate, but, you know, the simplest form is, I just don't want to do it, and let me find out another reason why I need to do something else instead of that. So being aware that you're procrastinating is one thing, okay? Doing something about it is another. So if you can somehow heighten your awareness of when you do that and why you're doing that, that is going to help. And of course, multitasking. Now, I know you're probably thinking, okay, well, why? What's wrong with multitasking? Multitasking, believe it or not, is, you know, a trap. It does suck up time, and it is not really efficient. And, you know, I'm a multitasker as well, just because sometimes you just have to multitask. But when it comes to multiple subjects and you're trying to do that, it's really difficult to jump from one subject to the next subject to go back to the next subject. You know, it really does cut up your train of thought when you're trying to, say, for instance, develop a well-written, you know, essay, and you're jumping all over the place because you need to do all these things. You really need to have pretty much, if you know you're only going to have 30 minutes, then just spend 30 minutes on something and then go do, you know, something different, shift to another subject, but try to get through it. So we'll talk a little bit more about multitasking, or actually maybe another way to multitask, but it's slightly a different perspective, okay? Any questions on that? I know the last webinar I did, multitasking was a really hard thing for some students to grasp. They didn't understand why multitasking was a trap and why it's bad. So any questions? I just want to move across. Move to the next. Go right ahead, Lisa, if you want to ask a question. Think about multitasking. Just while Lisa is typing, think about multitasking. You know, when you do true multitasking, do you ever really accomplish anything fully? You know, several of the positions I've had in business, you know, I was forced to really multitask, but I never really, in some cases, really fully developed certain things just because I had to jump from one thing to the next. You know, now of course there's the idea of being flexible and moving from, you know, one project to the next, but when you really look at it, it is a detriment. Okay, so Lisa, so what about when it comes to studying? I read that it's more efficient for concentration to move from one subject to another. so that you don't reach your saturation point? Is there a happy medium? Well, that's a little bit different, okay? It's different that, I guess what I'm saying is that don't start with one, then jump over to the next one, jump over to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. I guess, yes, I understand the saturation point, but on the other hand, if you're going from history to stats, yeah, they're completely different, but if you're going to stats to quantitative methods or something that are somewhat similar, you're not really... Well, Lisa, let me ask you, if it works for you, okay, then I would continue doing that. All right. So, I mean, there's a lot of discussions about, how much can your brain actually take? How much can you actually absorb? So if you're reading, and you're reading because it obviously was assignment, and you have to create or develop a paper, does it make sense to kind of read that paper, make some notes, or develop that paper, make some notes about the reading, okay, go take a break, knowing that you're not going to return to that particular subject, then go to the next, okay? That's what I'm talking about is fine. It's when you're popping back and forth and not really accomplishing much. That's what I mean by multitasking, if that makes sense. I hope it does. Okay, you're welcome. Okay, so Faye, not really. I am service coordinator and I feel overwhelmed a lot and I feel like I don't complete what I can do. Yeah, that's tough because I don't know much about what a service coordinator does and what the responsibilities are, but sometimes your job sometimes forces you to do that and doesn't allow you to finish something. So that really comes down to time management. It really comes down to, okay, can I concentrate on this for X amount and accomplish what I need to go on to the next thing? Or are you being forced to actually move into the next I don't know, project or next situation or issue? Not really sure. I don't know if you want to explain to me a little bit more of what you mean by that. Okay. Anyways, myths of time management. Let's talk about that. And we all do this, by the way. There's too much to do. I can't handle it. We've all said that. I've said that. What it really comes down to is that I'm not organizing very well, okay, and possibly I took on way too much. That's what it comes down to, okay? So, look at it when you're saying there's way too much and I can't handle it. Is it really that I'm not organized and I'm not really prioritizing, or is it really that I just can't say no? All right. There's plenty of time. I can do it later. Well, I guess this comes back to, that's why I asked you the definition of time. What is time worth to you? All right. And, you have to consistently view time the same way. So just kind of look at your time. And, of course, both those bullets 1 and 2 really are procrastinating when you really look at it. 3 and 4, somewhat similar. I'm busier than usual. Okay, so it makes sense to shift those off for another time. Occasionally this is true, by the way, okay? But it might not be. So you got to be really careful there, because when you look at number 4, rescheduling something to a later time is procrastinating. Well, is it really? Both of those, it might really pertain to reprioritizing, okay, and really looking at if you're rescheduling something over and over and over and over again, then is it really important? And, perfect example, I know this is kind of a ridiculous example, but some of the women might actually understand this. You have a closet full of clothes. You've got your fall and you've got your summer. You move them around. You keep moving them around, keep moving around. Year later, a year and a half later, I still have some clothes I haven't put on my body in the last year and a half, 2 years. Why do I continue to move those around? Okay, I mean, it's kind of the same thing. Get rid of them. So the same thing applies to rescheduling. If you're rescheduling something, my guess is that you really have to look at it to see, is it important, and should I just move this off? And it's just wasting my time by moving it around. And then the last point, this little task is not important. Well, really, it's on your list. Okay, is it just you don't want to do it? Okay, or is it really not that important? So you have to really decide, is it or is it not important? All right, so, this applies to your schoolwork, but this also applies to, your your personal life as well, okay, that could affect also your academic life and your business life. So you really have to look at that and really prioritize your time in general, things that are on your list. Okay, so now I'm going to give you what, time management, at least the definition. Okay, and a lot of you already said this. It's really, organizing and prioritizing your time, okay, so that you can succeed. And it's difficult to do that when you have competing things, for your time. A couple people said, you got family, you got pets, outside activities. If you have children, you probably have sports and practices and clubs and this and that, birthday parties, you name it. And so you really, in a lot of cases, you have to look at all that stuff too and prioritize and what's important, truly, truly important, that has to stay on your list, and other things you're just going to have to hold until you get done with your work, okay, your schoolwork. So you need to kind of look at that. And the bottom line is that time management doesn't just happen. Okay, you really do have to put some time into it. You have to schedule it. You have to at least plan or map it out. Doesn't mean that you can't change it, okay? But you at least have to do it. And I mentioned earlier, okay, I don't have the magic bullet when it comes to time management, okay? Let alone do I have, solutions to fit everybody's needs, because everybody's needs are slightly different. We're all different, learners. We all have a different way of studying, and we all have different schedules, and we come maybe from different cultures where time is looked at a little bit different, okay? And we have to look at what's going to work best for us. I can give you, some ideas, and you're going to have to figure out what's best for you, what's going to work best for you. And so what I mentioned, earlier, everybody's time is different. So for instance, I had some students that can only attend the webinar today at 2 o'clock, okay? Students tonight can only attend from 6 to 7 because that's where your time was. It could be because of work, could be other commitments, whatever it might be, but this worked for you. All right. The other thing too is that individuals are more productive at certain times of the day and night. And so my guess is I'm hoping that you guys took, there's a learning style assessment, and it goes through what type of a learner you are. And I believe also in that assessment it does address studying, okay, I think it does, study skills. I know I do a webinar on study skills about the optimum time and place to study. All right, we'll talk a little bit about that. Okay, so time management. And so as you all know, because we're all here tonight, okay, it is very difficult for us to control our time, okay, and especially for adults. When we were teenagers, it wasn't that difficult to control our time. We really didn't have a lot of responsibilities and commitments. As adults, we have lots of responsibilities and commitments, and schooling to us is a lot more important and means a lot more than when we were 18, right? So how can we kind of address those time issues? Well, there's a variety of assessment tools that you can use. Depends on really how much time you want to spend. My first advice is that don't spend an enormous amount of time on a tool that is going to make you unproductive, as I guess is my point. Okay, if it's very difficult to use, my guess is chuck it. Okay, if it's not, it could be easy for someone else to use, it could be difficult for someone else. Don't use it. You want to find something that, one, you're going to use and that you're comfortable. It's like exercise. A lot of people have difficulties, with exercising, meaning they rather walk than go to the gym. If they're forced to go to the gym and they can't stand going to the gym, they're not going to exercise. So the same point really applies here. Okay, so you can look for some assessment tools. There are a lot on our website, and then of course there's other tools that can help manage your time. For instance, a weekly calendar, or a monthly calendar, or a to-do list. Okay, or if you use your phone to actually manage your time. I don't have my colleague here today, but she actually laughs at me. I have 3 calendars, and I actually share this every time I do this webinar. And I know that sounds kind of ridiculous, but I have such a busy schedule, and I have to somewhat categorize those calendars. I have a webinar calendar that I cross-reference with my work calendar because I have meetings and task force and search committees and everything else that I'm on. And then, of course, I have a personal calendar, okay, that I have to actually look and say, okay, I'm supposed to be at a swim meet here, basketball game here, and I'm supposed to be here and here. And oh, what about my activities? Oh, let me see here. I golf, I do this, whatever it might be. How is that going to kind of intertwine with everything else? And it works for me, okay, because it's consistent. I use it consistently. I review it consistently. You need to find something. I guess my point is find something, but use it consistently. It takes some time. We'll get into that a little bit more. But what I wanted to do, I wanted to show you this kind of neat. Of course, I typed this in the wrong way the last time, so let's make sure I do this. There is a tool out there that I would use it as a guide. I would not use it verbatim. And the reason being is because it might not necessarily apply to everything. But here is this calculator, and I'm going to push it to the chat, and then you can click on that, and you can bookmark it. But basically, it calculates assignment schedules. And so here on this particular page, it shows the beginning assignment is today's date. The ending assignment, okay, oops. Why isn't it not going there? There you go. The ending assignment, I'm just going to put a month later, and it'll calculate a schedule. And, you know, the step one, understanding your assignment, okay? So obviously the first step, we want to make sure we understand the assignment, because if we don't understand the assignment, we really can't go any further. And then we need to understand, okay, what kind of citation style is required, okay, and, you know, what type of bibliography. Are we looking for an annotated bibliography or just a regular bibliography? You need to understand those before you move forward, because then you start preparing. And then it steps you through, so on and so forth. Now, of course, this can be tweaked and so on and so forth, but if you're having a really difficult time managing some of the assignments and when to start and do certain things, this might be a tool you could use to help, okay, with some of those assignments. Okay? So anyways, just out of curiosity, before I go on to the next slide, how many of you have printed off your course schedules? Let me just raise your hand. I'm curious to see how many have printed off their course schedules. You're welcome, Erin. Okay. All right. Good. All right. So you printed out those course schedules, which is great. I don't know how many courses you're taking on average, okay? But if it's more than one, hopefully you've got those separated, and maybe you have used a calendar, all right? Because that's important. If you have not printed off those schedules, I highly suggest printing off those schedules. All right, you can bring them anywhere. Now, granted, I know we have technology. We don't want to waste paper and stuff like that. But if you're traveling all over the place, you're in different places and stuff, sometimes having that piece of paper really, really helps so you can review it. Okay? All right. The other thing I suggest to some of my students is that they print off those schedules, they print off the course syllabus and some information, and they create a binder. The schedule's in the front of the binder, and that, you know, maybe there is a calendar that they're using, or at least at a minimum they're looking at the binder on a regular basis. Okay? Glad everybody prints them off though. Okay, so strategies for using time wisely. I just want to look at something because I did miss something in the last session in regards to time. Okay. So one important thing, I think, and we talked about limits and saying no, it's basically boundaries, okay? You do need to create blocks of time and breaks. And again, you know, how much time can you spend studying, preparing? Make sure you have time is in small blocks, okay? Your time is in small blocks. Somebody asked in the previous webinar, you know, studying for 2 hours, you know, how much should I? That's an awful lot of time. And I do understand, okay, because I do the same thing. I'm in grad studies right now, and sometimes when you really into something, you don't want to let it go, but honestly, at some point you got to let it go and you got to go take a break, okay, because it's hurting you. So I suggest that, you know, maybe an hour and then go and take 5-10 minutes to take a break and come back. But as long as you are I guess scheduling some time, whenever that is, okay, and that you are taking breaks. Make sure they count though, okay, and then re-energizing during that time. So it could be that you just need to walk around the block, say for instance, and just kind of clear your minds and then go back to the subject, okay? And like I say, make sure you go back. If the intention is to go back, go back. Don't make those breaks 30 minutes, 45 minutes, because forget it. At that point, you've disengaged, okay? And it's going to be difficult to get back into that groove. If you want to go take a break and put, I don't know, the laundry in the dryer, fine, but make sure that you are kind of refreshing, you don't get kind of caught there. And then, of course, like I said, use a calendar to manage that time. Let me see here. Subjects that are difficult, and I do want to make sure that I address some of these things. So just out of curiosity before I go into this, how many of you start with the most difficult subject first? Or do you start with the easier one? So who starts with the difficult one first? Okay. And so I'm going to guess that the majority of you, or the other half, is starting with the easier one. Okay. So start off, okay, for those students that are starting with the difficult subjects, good, because that's really what you should do. You should start off with the difficult ones first, and then go to the next ones that are easier. And the reason being is that you are fresh when you start, okay, and you can process the information more quickly, and it saves you time in the end. The other thing too is that it gives you little blocks of success, that you've started it and go, okay, I've read that, I can kind of understand that, I need more information on that. So at least you know you need to do something. Maybe you need to go and seek some help, all right? But at least it reduces the anxiety because you've started it, okay? If you don't start it, the anxiety builds up about that particular subject, all right? And so that's not good. So you start it, it reduces. And I know that kind of is counterintuitive, but in fact it actually does work. I want to talk a little bit about, again, studying in shorter time blocks with shorter breaks in between. An hour and a half, I think that's an excessive amount, believe it or not. It does make you fatigue and it does waste time. So if you can, try to keep it to 30 minutes, take a break, come back. Your brain can only absorb so much. What else do I want to say? Let's see here. Go right ahead. Is that Samuel? Let me just make sure I got your name. So I can't see it completely, so I just want to make Samantha. Go right ahead, Samantha. Because think about this, and something that I want you to also maybe make the connection. When you go to sleep, do you ever hear sleep on the problem, and you wake up the next morning and go, aha? Well, your brain is still processing that information. The brain is still processing the information when you go to sleep, and the brain is still processing the information when you take a break. Okay, so that is the reason why those breaks, and even just getting away from the subject, and maybe it is time to go to sleep, okay, does help. So Lisa, not easier for me, just random selection. Okay, got it. And of course, we talked about this earlier. Make sure you have time to sleep and eat properly, okay? And I know that this can be difficult. I fall into this trap all the time, and I'm sure all of you do if you work, or if you're going from place to place to place with your children, and you have other commitments, meeting to meeting to meeting, and you try to grab something. By the time it's like 5 o'clock, you got to go home, you got to make dinner, you got to do this, and you haven't really eaten properly, and it does affect. Try to do the best you possibly can in that manner. Katie, go right ahead, type in your question, please, or comment. Or Kate, pardon me. I'm just going to wait 1 minute. Okay. Any tips on how to make a break turn into a stop? Oh, not turn into a stop? Is that what you mean, Kate? Yes, okay. Honestly, maybe that's the sign that you should stop. Or it could be that, it depends. How long you've been, give me an example. How long have you gotten into something and you take a break and it just stops? Maybe you've been at something for quite some time. I would say at that point, most likely you have to take a break. But if you've only been at it for 10, 15 minutes, I think you're going to have to get into a practice of recognizing the fact you're doing that and forcing yourself back. Maybe the environment possibly is not conducive to you learning. Maybe there's some distractions. Maybe just every 15 minutes. Okay, so 2 hours of work and then a 15-minute break turns into an hour. Yeah, my guess is that you need the break, Kate. 2 hours of work is an awful lot, and the brain is probably telling you, I'm tired, I need a break, I don't want to go back to it. And if you can afford to do that, I would do that. I would say you just have to just go back to it either later in the day or the following day. Kate, sometimes I set a timer and it helps me remember to get back to what I was doing. Maybe that can help for when you're not needing a break so much. That's a good point, Lisa. Okay, so, and then you would have to get into a practice. So there's definitely many different approaches to getting us back on track. But again, Kate, I don't know, 2 hours is a lot. I've done that. I was on the computer last night for 3.5 hours. My husband finally had to come up and say, I think you need to get off. And I said, I think you're right. All right, so, if I went to take a break, I would have not probably returned back to that computer, recognizing the fact that I've already been on it for quite some time. So I think you get my point. It's not easy. And the last point here, okay, you're welcome, is not procrastination, by the way. Okay, it's combining activities. And so what I mean by this, okay, for instance, you're driving in the car. You could be listening to something that has something to do with, okay, your course, okay? If you're in a doctor's office, I know my doctor's appointments, I'm not in there. Sometimes I'm in there within 10 minutes, but sometimes I'm, waiting an hour to get in, or I'm waiting an hour with my children. And so you can take that time, actually, to maybe, look at your calendar and see what's coming up. Maybe put some, information into your calendar. Maybe it's to read an assignment and really understand the assignment and make notes. Or maybe you really have time to read, a short chapter, okay? Just make sure when you do combine activities that you do understand, okay, the time limits, okay? Try not to get into something so intense that, you're thinking you have an hour at the doctor's office and you only have 10 minutes and, you can't complete what you started, all right? So just look at opportunities, okay, to combine activities. And those are free gifts the way I look at it. If you're waiting at the bus stop, okay, waiting in the airport, those are free gifts. And sometimes there's also breaks too, so keep that in mind. Okay, so here's some strategies, okay, and I kind of alluded to this, quite a bit, and some of this is a little repetitive, but for instance, study space. Study space is very, very important. Some people have no problem studying with a lot of distraction around them. The kitchen is the best place, but some other people cannot. They really need to be in a quiet space. But just in case those spaces are not available, make sure you have an alternative space just in case. So, someone asked me, all right, well, I'm at a practice, my son's practice, basketball. I can't concentrate with those balls bouncing around. Okay, well, is the hallway available? Do you have to stay there? Can you go and sit in your car and read? Is there a library close by? So think about and be creative, okay, about the space and really truly understanding, okay, what space is conducive to your learning style. Some people can't stand it when it's extremely quiet. It's actually distracting, all right? So just make sure that you're in tune with that. And then, of course, weekly reviews. Weekly reviews are very, very important. Know what's coming up for the week. You want to be prepared. If necessary, if you have to, review your schedule every other day and just get into that practice and that habit. And then there's no surprises. Oh my gosh, I didn't know I had that assignment due Friday. Well, if you had looked at the calendar, you would have. Or if it wasn't on the calendar, it should be on the calendar now. Great ahead, Lisa. I don't know about anyone else, but I have courses with modules that are scattered. Yep, so I'm starting a new module in one class while halfway through a module in another. I find it difficult to keep track of. Do you have any suggestions to help with this? You know, I'm curious to see what everybody else has to say about that, because I do know that certain courses do have these modules scattered. Sometimes they're due weekly, sometimes every other week. Some cut off. So how is everybody else dealing with that? Great ahead, Faye. And actually, you guys don't have to, if you have a question, Faye, go right ahead, but you don't have to raise your hand to just comment on that. That'll be fine. Okay, so Laura uses an assignment pad. Okay. So Ashley says, every Sunday night I look at all my course schedules and write down exactly what is due that week. When I have completed it, I cross it off. Okay. That's okay, Faye, no problem. Yep, Google Calendar with Minder pop-ups. Yep, a physical binder with course calendar. And I cross off assignments as they are done. Great. What I do is take the course schedule and staple the individual weeks to my organizer. Yep, and Faye says Sunday is her day. And let me see, Erin, I began printing out a paper schedule and writing assignments on it for every class, a running weekly schedule regardless of modules syncing in or out. Yeah, so the bottom line is that you have to come up with a way to manage that time, and you know everybody's come up with at least their way, and they're not going to sync, unfortunately, Kate. And so, how are you doing it? Are you trying to do the same? Are you keeping some type of a calendar? Because if I'm not mistaken, I think you said you did print off your calendar or your schedule. Pardon me. Sounds like you're going to have to look at your schedules on a daily basis just to make sure that you're not missing anything. I can give you, okay, I've tried everything people have listed. I'm using a few of those methods as we speak. It's just not helping very much for some reason. You know, Lisa, I'm wondering, just out of curiosity, I've seen some courses where, and this gets really tricky and gets very confusing, where, and I'm wondering if this is the problem. Module 1, say for instance, okay, they call it a draft is due on, let's just say, October 1st, okay? And then Module 2, they're saying work on, you know, another project which is due, you know, let's say October, you know, 8th. But also your draft of Module 1's assignment is going to be due, you know, it's like a running assignment, and they all kind of fold into each other. Is that what you're talking about as well? Or are you just talking about two different courses that are just not syncing? Yeah, okay. Lisa, I think you're just going to have to work at it and just going to have to continue looking at your schedule and just making sure that you're not missing some of those assignments. And it will get easier. You're just going to have to just stay on top of it. And, you know, we can talk about it a little bit more. Maybe there's something else we can see that might work. And I can look and see what you're doing. I know I have an academic coach that uses a spreadsheet to track her courses, and how it works, I can look into that. That might be something else if you're comfortable using a spreadsheet. And of course, it comes down to, are you comfortable with the, you know, with the tool? So if that's something you're interested in, you can contact me, and I can ask her to get in touch with you and actually review that with you if you like. Maybe that's something that might work. There's my email address. Oops, I put it to the wrong person. I'm sorry. I put it to M. Tracy. All right, so let's see. I thought of a project management software because most other tools are about deadlines rather than processes, which are what assignments really are. I'm not comfortable with spreadsheets, by the way. Okay. Email me anyways, and let me see what you're looking at. You know, like I said, I don't think I have any magic bullets there. I think you're going to have to kind of come up with some way to kind of manage that, unfortunately, or even continue to poll students in your course on how they're managing their times, or even ask your mentor, by the way, what she or he might suggest. That's okay. It's fine, Lisa. This is what it's about. Okay. So let me just look here. Okay, go right ahead. Okay, anyone using an iPhone as much as I do? I love the free app Weekly Calendar, incredibly useful for me with variable scheduling views, and it syncs with your Outlook and Google Calc. Interesting. I don't have an iPhone, Erin. I have an Incredible, which I wish I had the iPhone because it looks much easier to use. Kate says, I noticed that each CDL class has a calendar, and as of yet, none of the calendars have. Yeah. Good luck, Kate. They don't use them. I will tell you, Kate, that we are moving to a different learning management system, Moodle, and so Angel is a little difficult to use. We're using Google Calendar for certain things, but we have so many different calendars here in the college that no one calendar is the norm, unfortunately. Hopefully in Moodle it's going to be, and it's going to be much easier, and there might be some tools in there, okay? Yeah, Moodle's so much better, I agree, yes. And by the way, okay, there will be training and assistance for students because I don't want to freak everybody out today, okay, with Moodle, but it is definitely much, much, much better, okay, than the Angel system that you're learning in, okay, currently. Okay, so I just want to make sure I covered everything on the weekly schedule here. Just make sure. Okay. So the one point I want to make about the review, okay, and basically understanding what you need. Yeah, understanding what you need is preparing. You know, we do fire drills, correct? And we're doing fire drills not because there's a fire, but we're preparing just in case there's a fire. So the same thing here really applies, okay, is that when you're looking ahead or you're looking to see what you might possibly need, like understanding, you know, where our online library is, how to contact me, say, for instance, how to contact my office, how to contact your mentor, how to contact each instructor. You've prepared, even if you created a cheat sheet, okay, and it's stuck somewhere that you see, you've prepared. So when you do need that assistance, all you do is pull it out, okay, and you contact whomever or you go to that place to find the information, all right? So then you're really reducing the amount of time that it's going to take for you to find that, all right? So I guess that's my last point on that. Okay, so let me go to the next slide. We talked a little bit about prioritizing. Of course, there's several different strategies that can be applied, and it really, again, it comes down to what you're comfortable with. But again, strongly, strongly, strongly suggest begin with the subject or assignment that causes you the most problems. The reason being also, let me just make another point, is because if it's going to be difficult, it's probably going to take you a little longer, which means you probably should be starting it first, because if you start it last, you're going to run out of time. And you're probably going to come across something that you didn't realize that was going to be a problem, and you're going to have to go seek that help. All right? And so it really comes down to, again, managing that time, buffering some time in there just in case. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Make a list and prioritize. We've talked about that. If you have to change it, change it. That's what lists are for. And again, if the priority list, you keep finding this one item on the bottom, get rid of it. And then make sure to build in reaction time. Okay, so reaction time, basically it's a buffer. Okay, you know, life is unpredictable. Sometimes assignments, you're going to find that, oop, I guess I didn't realize I had to do that. Oh my gosh, I didn't really, you know, consider time for that. Oh, I'm stuck in traffic and I can't get home. I was originally going to be home by 5, now I'm going to get home at 8. Okay, and you know, something is due. Or you wait to the last minute. Don't ever wait to the last minute. Granted, I know that it does happen, but if you're waiting to the last minute to submit something, okay, and you submit it to Smart Thinking, and you're thinking Smart Thinking turns it around within 12 hours when in fact it's 24 hours, and they haven't gotten back to you, and maybe they're taking, depending on peak times, they're taking a little more than 24 hours, and you don't have time to incorporate the feedback, shame on you. You really should have probably put a little buffer time in there, okay? So I guess that's what I mean by prioritizing. This is a big one for me. Just start. Just get something done. Don't stall. Don't go backwards, because you're just going to get nothing accomplished, all right? If you start, you at least, okay, can plan for it, okay? The other thing, too, is, I mentioned this earlier, details are sometimes not always evident. And if you wait to read something and then you have all these questions and the instructor definitely clarifies or says, oops, I made a mistake, you really need to do this, really requires you to do more than you had expected, you're going to find yourself, in a difficult situation. Rough drafts. A lot of students understand this concept, but rough drafts are really important. They are rough. That's the reason why they're called rough. They can be edited later. So don't start your rough draft as it's got to be perfect. The rough draft is I guess I look at it as a collection of thoughts and ideas that's framing what the essay or the paper is going to essentially look like, or at least include. You can delete, okay, with word processors nowadays, you can just cut and delete, and add, okay? So please look at rough drafts. Rough drafts are meant to be edited and re-edited, okay? Of course, they shouldn't be edited and re-edited 20 times, okay? That falls also into the perfection trap. That also is inefficient. That also is a time trap, by the way. So just make yourself aware that that can happen. And then, of course, postpone unnecessary activities. What do I mean by that? Okay, dinner's done. I really need to go work on this because it's due Friday. Can the dishes wait? Of course they can wait. It's not the end of the world, right? Now, that might kind of freak you out, but can they wait until after you get some of your work done? Of course they can. You can go back down and do the dishes. It doesn't take a lot of effort to do those dishes, right? And that might be the time where you kind of wind down while you're putting the dishes away and so on and so forth. Or possibly maybe ask somebody else to assist with that. I mean, I'm using dishes as an example, but I think you get my point. And then resources. Already talked about this. This talks about preparation. I'm not going to repeat that, but just make sure you know what resources are available and where you can find them. And I guess my advice tonight, again, is don't give up, okay? Empire State College has an enormous amount of resources. I just don't think students take advantage of the resources that we have here. We try to do the best that we can to support your efforts. Sometimes it takes a little longer if we don't have something to address your specific need, but we do the best, like I said, we can. Use some of the tools I suggested tonight, or excuse me, don't use the tools that you're uncomfortable with. Okay, so for instance, Kate, she's not comfortable with Excel, so don't use Excel, okay, because all that's going to do is increase your anxiety and your stress, and it's not going to do anything. So definitely find something that does work for you. So let's go to the do list, all right? Understand your traps. First thing is understand your traps and try to stop yourself, okay, from getting into those. And, we're not perfect. It's going to happen. But, over time, hopefully you can kind of, shift yourself away from that trap. And, of course, use strategies that work and add new ones as you see fit. So, you might be trying something, I don't really like this. I need to add a new one. This is better. And that'll happen. But just make sure you at least stick to it long enough, because just like with food, and I'm sorry I use, examples like this with children, but, you introduce food to a child at least 10 times before they start liking it. It's kind of the same thing here, by the way. When something is introduced, it's difficult, it's clumsy, it's this and that, but after you use it a couple times, it becomes a little bit more comfortable, okay? And it becomes a habit as long as you do it consistently. If you don't do it consistently, each time you go in there, it's going to be uncomfortable. And then lastly, really just monitor yourself. Take a moment maybe on a weekly basis and reflect. What's working, what's not working? Can I make some of these adjustments? I'm not asking you to sit there and reflect for hours. couple minutes while you're driving in the car would work, you know. Just kind of look at what really went right this week, what didn't, you know, what can I change, you know. Oh gosh, I didn't do really well on that assignment, why not? Okay, oh okay, this happened and this happened. What can I do to avoid that next time? All right, guess that's all I'm saying. And then I'm not going to go through all these, but you will, like I said, you'll get these slides. You don't have to write these down. This is just a list of some broader assistance that can help you be a little bit more successful here at the college. And angel help if you need it. There's some tutorials out there. And then this is a cheat sheet that I kind of created that gives you a list of, I think, really great resources that you should be aware of as a student. You know, there's a peer tutoring program, Smart Thinking. If you have not signed up for Smart Thinking, you should. It's an online tutoring service. It's free. They've added, by the way, Kate, Excel tutoring. Okay, so if anybody is uncomfortable with Excel, say for instance, they have Excel tutoring, and they have, matter of fact, tutoring for all of the Microsoft products. They have some advanced level accounting now they've added. They also have where you can submit your paper and they will provide feedback. I know I'm picking on you, Kate, so I'm sorry. I'm just making light of it. Not you, Kate, I'm sorry. Was it Lisa? I can't really, hold on a second here. It's Lisa. I'm sorry, Kate. So there's lots of resources available. Just go to some of these links. And of course, I've got my contact information out here, as well as the Office of Academic Support. And then if you're not familiar with Khan Academy, I would visit Khan Academy. They have very short videos on several topics, you know, ranging from math to sciences to finance and so on and so forth. They're not fancy. They're short clips. They're meant really to address the basics of learning. Okay, Laura, thank you very much. You're welcome. And that is it for my presentation. Holy cow, I ended up at 7 o'clock. So if you have any questions or comments, I can definitely address those. I will stay here for another couple of minutes. How's that? Thank you, Kate and Faye. You're welcome, Erin. Okay, Regina, thank you. You're welcome, Valerie. Thank you. Okay, Amanda, thank you. As well, Sharman. You're welcome, Christina. Same thing, Ivy. So if you come up with any questions, like I said, you'll get the presentation along with the, absolutely, you're going to get a copy of it, Alicia. So you're going to get a copy of the PowerPoint presentation along with the recorded link so you can refer back to what we discussed tonight and some of the questions that were asked. There's also going to be a link to a survey, so any feedback that you can provide, you know, what you like to see as far as webinars, you know, what you liked and disliked about tonight's webinar, feel free, you know, just be honest, okay? All right then. If there's no other questions, you know, we can end the evening and you can go on. Go right ahead, Ashley. So Ashley, do you set aside time each night to do some of your work? I find myself constantly doing all the work on Sunday night, and it's something that I cannot seem to break. Yeah, Ashley, I do. The one thing that's difficult is I personally cannot do all my work on one night. It's very difficult. I would suggest that, you know, is there a time during the week that you can break that up? You're going to have to look at your week. I kind of look at, you know, when, and students do the same thing, you know, when do you have the time? Is it after work? Is it during lunch? I mean, look at what you're doing on Sunday. I mean, do you have all day Sunday? Do you work all day Sunday on your work, Ashley? Yeah, Faye says I try at least 4 times a week to check in, then work on something each time. Okay, it just seems like I work better under pressure. For example, I can usually do a paper in an hour or so, whereas during the week it would take 2 or more hours. Well, then my question to you, Ashley, is that, and I understand that you work better under pressure, you know, how are you doing on your papers as far as when you're submitting them? If you're doing well and it's working for you, then, you know, I don't know if I would change it. I mean, if you are absorbing the material and the knowledge and you're doing well, I would stick with it. Well, okay. It's possible, I don't know if you're in intro or advanced classes, it might be that might shift a little bit depending on some of the courses you take. I don't know where you are in your degree. So, you know, as you get into some other courses, you might find that you might need to kind of break that up, especially when you get to a little bit more complex topics. Well, then I would say if it works for you, I would continue doing that. If it takes you longer, I guess I would ask, if it takes you longer, is it because you're getting interrupted, or is it because you've got other things on your mind and you're rushed, not rushed, but you're just not in tune? I don't know. But it sounds like if it's working for you, I would stick with it. Well, then there you go. So if you have the time and you know it and that's relaxing for you, then I would stick with it. If you're not liking it, then you have to just kind of look and see, is there another night that you can break up the work? You know, maybe doing 2 nights instead of 1 night. Because that's 7 hours from 5 to 12. My goodness. You're welcome, Ashley. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording, okay?